Good evening and welcome to another fun and exciting episode of Cover1 Buffalo podcast. Here I am your host Greg Thompson, joined with all three of us together again with Aaron Quinn and Erik Turner. Aaron, how we doing this evening?
This is a great week for me, man. It's like a big Cover1 reunion. We had Nate during the week, and now I got Erik, man. This is really nice.
Erik, how you feeling?
Good, man. I mean, we lost, but you know what? I wanted to join you guys. You guys get to have all the fun all the time, but I figured I'd come in as backup for you fellas, even though we got the loss today. I'm excited to join you guys, though.
Today's a weird kind of test case for, everyone who has their wish list of what you want. We'll get into it, but honestly, today should make almost everybody happy. We got a great game from Josh Allen, and you didn't ruin the draft pick, so I'm sure they'll find something else to complain about. But it was a fun game. But before we get into everything, just want to do a quick shout out to the team over at Cover1.net. Just fantastic coverage and quality content coming out all the time. Fantastic articles. I'm sure you guys will see the 4 up, 4 down coming from Fernando any minute here. We have the awesome draft coverage already going from Russell and from Christian. The fantastic video breakdowns coming in from Erik. Just awesome stuff across the board. My favorite part of that is the premium Slack. Games like today are fantastic. We had 25 guys in there all at once, going back and forth, active, watching the game, talking, and you don't get caught up in some of the crazy arguments you get on the rest of social media. And it just really gives you, intelligent dialogue with people who are plugged in to what the organization is trying to accomplish and everything that we're trying to do. So I love it, and I know there's a lot of good things going on. Erik, what are your thoughts on your baby here at Cover1.net?
I couldn't be more proud of you guys, honestly. It takes a lot of people behind the scenes to run the site, to run these podcasts. A lot goes on, behind the scenes. And, guys like Vance Reeds, no one even talks about, and he's our editor. He helps put out all of our content. And, it's just a lot of work that goes into this site. But when I see some of the remarks that we see on Twitter, and the praise that we're getting, it makes it all worth it. So we appreciate you guys tuning in right now. We appreciate all the support at the site. And, again, this is our podcast. So get on the iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts, and leave a review for us. That's the least that's the only thing we can ask from you guys, besides the support that you already give us.
Absolutely. And Aaron, anything else to add before we jump into this week's episode?
Yeah, the Bills aren't the worst. We're not the worst. I agree with everything you guys said. I've had so much fun working with everyone here at Cover1, and not only do I get to work with you guys, but I'm a consumer of the content as well. And I have to say, I thought I knew a lot about football a couple years ago, and I've learned a lot as a fan just consuming the content that Erik puts out and just the whole team the team as a whole puts out. So if this is your first time hearing us or getting involved with us, definitely go check out the website, check out the premium memberships. It's a really great community of people that just love the Bills and love football.
Absolutely. And, we're going to go through and kind of talk, and we'll go through my favorite segment. We're going to talk about gruntled and disgruntled, which is, our player of the game and who's getting the credit they need to. And really just, everybody knows what disgruntled is, and gruntled doesn't get the attention that it should. So I'll kick things off for tonight. I don't care if it's a cop-out. My gruntled is Josh Allen. It's just so exciting to see the kind of plays, and don't get me wrong, we'll get into it more when we get in the offense, where there are a couple plays left on the field I would have liked to have seen, sure, but just the flash plays and the glimpses of hope are getting more and more consistent, more and more prevalent, and finally outweighing the negatives, where before it was a really rough game, but we had 2 or 3 plays to cling to. This week it seemed like we had an awful lot of positives with a couple of things going negative, and it was just really exciting to see. So, Erik, who is your gruntled, your positive player of the game?
I know it's easy, and it's probably going to be a consensus, but yeah, I'd have to go with Josh Allen too, because he took over the game. And a lot of his detractors are going to point to the negative plays with him, but what it comes down to is that he affected the game, whether it be good or bad. He affected the game with his legs. He affected the game with his passes. He threw some passes that, he needed touch. He needed passes where he had to rifle it in through a window. Yet the last pass wasn't the prettiest pass, but it got there. And, most guys couldn't make those throws. So I'd have to agree, Josh Allen, he stole the show. He took over the game, and that's what you want your top 10 pick to do.
Yeah, Aaron, do you have anything different than
Well,
than Alan?
just because I agree with you guys totally.
Yeah.
And the thing that stood out for me most about Allen was he had not a very good first half, and he came out and compiled most of those stats and stuff in the second half. And it goes to something we talked about a lot in the preseason, which was I think that this kid has a great head on his shoulders. He's not going to get too down on himself, and even he won't get too high either. So that's great to see. But what I'll say for my gruntled is Zay Jones. I love the way Zay Jones has played this year. I love what he did today. I think he had a lot more left on the field. He was open almost every time I saw. Obviously, that touchdown, there was some miscommunication there where he didn't, get that third touchdown. That would have been a crazy day for him. So I love what Zay Jones is doing right now, and I think that is a huge building block for next off season if he is a legitimate wide receiving target in the NFL.
Yeah, no, I think it was a great call, and we'll get into that more when we get into the offense. Flipping around to the disgruntled, I don't know who to lay it at the feet of, so I'm going to say Danny Crossman, but just so many special teams gaffes, and I realize that when we don't give him credit for the high end of things for Hauschka, we can't blame him for the negative of missing the extra point, but the whatever that coverage issue was on the muffed punt that you had Lafayette Pitts falling into into Isaiah McKenzie causing the muffed punt. You had the other issues. It's just special teams cost us this game. We should have been in a much more positive position, and I'll lay that at the feet of Danny Crossman. Aaron, who is your disgruntled?
I was pretty right there with you, but again, just to not keep things repetitive, I'll say I had this last week too, and I hate to be the guy that complains about the officials in the league, but I thought it was a very poorly called game. I know that these two teams are sloppy teams. That's what happens when you have mediocre to not good football teams. So you're going to get some of that. But I saw maybe 3 instances, I'll have to go back and watch, where Allen got hit low a couple times. It got a couple to the head, some late hits, driven to the ground. So maybe 3 to 4 of those. Those are big plays that you're supposed to be a league that focuses on protecting the quarterbacks and protecting the future at that position. And it just seems that somebody put on my Twitter, it was a good reference that Shaq in the NBA, people hacked him because he was so big, that maybe Allen's just too big and physical, and the refs aren't calling it. I don't know what it is, but I hope that the Bills start to get the calls that the other teams around the league get, especially with the quarterback.
No, that's a great point, Aaron. Yeah, someone also brought on my timeline. You talk about Shaq. I mean, the Cam Newton treatment too. Those big quarterbacks, they're just not getting those kind of calls, and it's BS. And I agree. I think the refs this week, for the second week in a row for our game, were atrocious. For me, I would put it on Hauschka, just because he's so money all the time. I thought he obviously had an off day today. I know they got the 2-point conversion to kind of make up for that missed extra point, but it was one of those things, like, you expect him to hit those field goals no matter how deep they are. Rough day, but I'd say he'd probably be my disgruntled.
No, I think that's fair, and it's like you said, we do sing his praises all the time. We pretty much count him as automatic, so I think it's fair to hold him accountable when you have a bad game. You had both the missed kick, and then I know Miami has crappy turf and it's not great footing, and you have a new holder, but that 55-yarder was pretty woefully short. So just something that, he has been automatic. I still have full confidence. I'm sure we'll get back to, normal, fantastic kicking again going forward. And I'm happy he's our kicker now and into next year. But yeah, honestly, probably his worst game as a Bill thus far was today. So I think that's fair. Jumping right into things, obviously we already touched on the piece from Alan, but let's get into it in a little more detail. As Aaron touched on, there was probably a little bit of difference in the two halves, and all of a sudden you look up at the end of this game, 9 carries for 135 yards, and his long was only 28. So an average of 15 yards a carry, and almost all of them were for a first down or for double-digit yardage. There had to have been 2 or 3 times where I swore he was sacked, and all of a sudden he's rushing for positive yardage. Whether you're talking about the Cam Newton, Ben Roethlisberger treatment, I think I saw that same tweet from Duff earlier. Yeah. Man, when he's pulling off runs like that, I get why they might give him that kind of treatment. What'd you guys think of that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll lead off here. I think, like I said, Allen, he took over the game, and he did what he's comfortable doing. And as a young rookie quarterback, with how raw he was coming out, you got to take the good with the bad. And sometimes, he's going to want to run the pocket. He's going to leave the pocket a little too soon. But a lot of the times right now, he's affecting the game positively in that way. So he's gonna have those moments where he's just gonna pull it down and take off. And you got to live with that. I'm sorry, guys. I know he crushed it in 9 attempts, 135. But they were big plays. I mean, they were really big plays. So I'm not going to knock him on that, especially when you look around the league, guys. As much as we want to say all the plays are from the pocket, well, a lot of the best offenses are designing plays for their quarterbacks outside the pocket. Patrick Mahomes has the most passes outside of the pocket. So, I mean, these types of schemes, these types of offenses, this open basketball court type offensive plays that are coming now, they are around the league. I think it's the norm. So we can't always ding him for wanting to leave the pocket too soon, because I think the more and more offensive firepower that you get with your quarterback, you're going to have him become that distributor, become that point guard. So I like his play, man, either way.
Yeah, to piggyback on that, what Erik just said, I think that a lot of it has to do with comfort with the talent that's there. Obviously, you're starting to see some of that with Zay Jones. Kelvin Benjamin's super inconsistent. He's just not a guy that I don't think anyone on the team feels a ton of confidence in right now. You have Deontay Thompson out there not really doing much. Foster, there's some confidence in there, but he's just not a clean route runner yet. So I think as he develops some confidence and gets better skill position players, you'll see him give the ball up a little bit more to guys that are getting open. But right now, I mean, I don't think there's a negative side to him running the football. It's a benefit that he brings to the team. It's why you draft a guy that has the type of athleticism he has and the size he has. So let him do it. He's young. He didn't really take any big hits. He was very smart moving around. Even when he didn't have a run to be made, he got rid of the ball. He was throwing the ball away intelligently, and he was getting down and sliding. And if he continues to do that and not take hits, I'm totally happy with him picking up stuff on the ground. But it's definitely not a sustainable way to win, to have your quarterback rush for 130 yards a game. You're not going to do it consistently in this league. So you want to see the passing come along too. But anyone that's getting on him for running too much, I don't know. I think it's what he brought that none of the other quarterbacks on this team had, which was ability to make some plays with your legs.
Yeah, there are three elements that I had in my notes that really go a long ways to that. One is he falling out of the pocket too soon, and I think I marked that maybe once. But in general, he was trying to stand in the pocket. He was trying to step up in the pocket and be able to make plays. Two, when he breaks out of there, is he keeping his eyes downfield? And he did that several times on plays that he rolled out and was, breaking loose and could have just tucked it and ran, and he didn't. He was able to go out there and really be able to keep his eyes downfield and made several really positive plays during that commotion that you talked about, Erik, when it's outside of the pocket and outside of the structure. And then three, when he does run, is he getting down? And obviously he didn't do that last week, and we saw him trying to make the stiff arm. We saw him trying to do that. And other than the one that was just fantastic when he embarrassed Kiko Alonso, the rest of it was incredibly positive to be able to have, I marked down 3 different times that he slid and got himself out of harm's way. And that's what we want to see, is that kind of progression and just learning from those situations to be able to do it. So, as long as we're seeing that, like you touched on, Aaron, that it's positive, that he's incrementally improving with those little nuanced elements, but still using his athleticism. I said it on Twitter, Kiko Alonso is an NFL caliber linebacker and athlete. He absolutely ran away from him on the one that went up the left sideline. He had those couple in a row, but Alonso had the angle on him, and he just straight ran away from Kiko Alonso and turned what should have been a 5 or 6 yard gain into what might have been his 28-yard long. I'm not sure if that was the long one. It might have been just 20. But just really impressive how athletic he really is. You underestimate that for as big as he is.
Yeah, and for a guy like him, I mean, he's going to break tackles, like you said, to extend those plays. And to Aaron's point, he's affecting the play calls on defense, guys. I mean, okay, he's got an arm that can hit anywhere on the field, but he's also got legs that can beat you. So are you going to spy up and play man? Okay, well, then that's just taking one less guy out of coverage. Like, he's doing a lot of things that, we liked in Tyrod Taylor and changing how the defense has to call things, but he's also got that howitzer of an arm where he can hit Robert Foster down the field. I know he missed on that long one today, but I don't think there's many other quarterbacks in the league that even make that throw, or even Foster may not even be open from Xavier Howard if Allen didn't have that arm. So, I mean, he's affecting the game, and he's affecting defenses, and that's what you want from your franchise quarterback.
Absolutely. Now looking at the rest of the offense, I think that Aaron touched on the other positive element there in Zay Jones, but let's talk a little bit about the running game. We did see a flash or two from LaShawn McCoy, but I got to be honest, I was rock solid that, LaShawn McCoy is a big part of our offense next year and going to be involved in what we're doing. And the more that I see this, and I see that $9 million cap figure next year, and I see it's only a $2 million dead cap and $7 million in savings, I've been just sure that he was going to be a part of this offense next year. And each game that I've seen the last couple of weeks, it's made me question that. So, I mean, Aaron, what are your thoughts on not only LaShawn McCoy today, but what you're thinking into the future?
I don't think that LaShawn McCoy goes anywhere unless he wants out of Buffalo, which could be a totally reasonable thing at the end of the season. He hasn't made any big deals during the year here, even though it's a down year. I was just on Sportsnet 590, and we were kind of talking about some of the veteran guys that you'd think maybe some of these guys would be down, being a 4-win team coming off a playoff. They're getting towards the end of their careers. They want to win, but you're not seeing that from LaShawn. Obviously, the media ripped him for not speaking to them for a little while, but I think that was more his personal performance than the team's issue. So the guy's a captain. He was voted captain by his teammates. I think the organization likes him. I think Sean McDermott really likes him, which is kind of an odd couple. LaShawn McCoy and Sean McDermott, but you see, it's a little thing, but you see LaShawn McCoy out there before every game with the respect the process shirt on. I think he's fully bought into what McDermott is bringing to this team and what the future is for this team. So I think unless Shady wants out or there's some ability to make some type of trade that works in the benefit of the team very well, I'm still kind of in that same spot where I just don't see it. The cap hit isn't, I mean, it is big, but they have so much cap flexibility. I think you just kind of put that in the books and move forward.
Yeah, I agree. You have that much money, in the bank. You don't make any drastic moves, especially if you don't have someone to take his place. You're not going to just find someone in the draft right off the bat, especially if they're going to try to replenish the offensive line and the receiver position. I don't think you're just going to find a guy that's going to put up or that could put up the production that Shady can. Obviously, our offensive line's the issue, guys. We've seen that the whole season. I don't think Shady's the issue. I think there are plays where Shady, is the issue. But I think the issue is up front and run blocking. I don't think they have that mentality up front quite yet. So I do not get rid of McCoy. One, because I don't think the money thing is really an issue. That shouldn't be a factor in my opinion. And then, like I said, you don't have someone behind him yet. And until you do, you don't get rid of a guy like that.
How can you say no one's behind him? Chris Ivory had 6 carries for 4 yards and fumbled the ball by accidentally dropping it.
That was unreal. The worst fumbles I've ever seen in all my years of watching football. They were trying to say on the game that it was like a mistake on the handoff, and he's like a good second after the handoff just drops it.
Oh, yeah.
I've never seen anything like it.
It was nuts, honestly, because, it was a light box. I think it was that the play where Allen checked out of pass into run, and they ran outside zone towards the camera, towards the near sideline.
Yes, it was coming right at us.
Ivory's running outside zone, so his eyes are obviously up, and then he takes his eyes off the front side of the play, looks backside at the backside corner blitz, and then fumbles the ball. It's like, what are you doing, dude?
No, you caught it.
Had the box.
When he did that, he's tripped a little bit. He slipped and caught on a piece of turf, and I think it totally threw him.
Just dropped the ball, though.
It was hysterical. But anyways, obviously, we're saying this in jest, but honestly, wouldn't be shocking if we had none of these running backs on the roster next year. I agree that LaShawn McCoy very likely is going to be, but another one of those, when you look at, playing around, I'm an addict on the SpotTrack.com website that lets you play with the roster. Next year, I think that Chris Ivory has a $3 million cap hit as a 31-year-old backup running back, and I think there's $500,000 in dead cap if you cut him. So you'd save $2.5 million. Now, again, we don't need the money. It's going to be the same argument that comes up on Charles Clay, the same thing that happens there. You have some others. I think Vlad Dukas is an easy one. It's like $80,000 in dead cap to remove his $2 million. So some of them certainly will be. But there's going to be a couple guys that's going to be interesting that, even though you don't need the money per se, could you find a better backup running back for less than the $3 million and dedicate that money elsewhere? So it's just running back's going to be an interesting spot. I do hope that we see LaShawn McCoy next year with a new drafted running back that eases his way in and maybe is ready to take over in 2020. But that'll be an interesting take, because now 2 weeks in a row, it's obviously, as Aaron touched on, it's not sustainable that your quarterback leads you in rushing, although I think this is 2 weeks in a row with 200 yards rushing overall as a team.
I think you can fully expect to see a very full running back room for training camp next year, whether that's through the draft, bringing undrafted guys in, bringing in free agents. I think they're going to try to find LaShawn McCoy's replacement and a solid backup, stable running backs. Marcus Murphy, for me, has kind of been a disappointment this season just because of how good he was in the summer. I really thought that he might be able to step up and take some of those carries from Ivory, but he just hasn't really done anything. I don't know if it's due to a lack of touches or what they're seeing in practice. I can't speak to that, but sort of a disappointment from Murphy for me.
Yeah, I'd say real quick, I agree. I think Murphy's been a disappointment. He is not going to get touches if he can't block in the passing game, and that was his issue early on in the year when he did get some burn. He just couldn't pick up any blitzes, and he was almost getting quarterbacks hurt. So until he shores that up, until he can get on the same page and pass protection, he's not going to get any burn with the ball in his hand from the quarterback.
Yeah, Mike Lucas in the chat made a good comment about liking to see LaShawn McCoy in more of a, in space in the passing game, getting him out there in some swing passes and more screens. And I think that's a role that we could see in the future where he can still be a big part of this offense, but maybe not, all those up the middle. I'd love to have our own Nick Chubb or whoever it is that can be that future guy who might be eventually the featured back, but initially can help take some of those tough plays and some of those, 3rd and 2 up the middle kind of runs, but that we still can use McCoy, where you saw he had that one play today where they had him in the backfield and he shook his guy, went out there to the right and still picked up the first down. So he certainly still has value. Moving into the passing game, I know that we touched on Zay already, but, Erik, what are your thoughts on no other receiver getting more than 5 targets and no other receiver getting more than 5 catches overall? You saw 8 different guys catch passes today. Zay had 4, Isaiah McKenzie with 4, LaShawn McCoy with 4. Benjamin got 2 of his 4 targets. Robert Foster 1 of his 4 targets. What are your thoughts on the overall? Your thoughts on Zay and then the rest of the receivers?
Well, I think a lot of that has to do with trust. Obviously, that's a big thing when it comes to a quarterback, is trusting receivers. But I think, the injury that Allen sustained and was out for a little while, I think that he lost a little that, maybe that rapport that he might have had. I think him and Zay Jones are building something nice. And that, I know a lot of people going into last week's game were worried about that, worried about Zay Jones, because Zay Jones was coming on, especially on those money downs on 3rd down. So to see Allen kind of pick up right where Zay Jones left off with Barkley and the other quarterbacks in that room, it was kind of nice. So what I'd like to see a little more scheming from Dable. Yeah, I think that we're relying a lot on outside of structure plays, but again, I think that just comes with the territory of having a young quarterback and receivers that are kind of feeling their way in the NFL game. And McKenzie, the Fosters, those guys are still learning how to play receiver at an NFL level. So, and even Zay Jones too, guys. I mean, let's chalk up last year. He didn't really get too much out of last year in that system. So, it's a young group. I mean, the coaches said that from day one when they started inserting some of these guys, and honestly, just separate with your speed when you can. And on the money downs, get it to Zay. And I think that's what Allen's figuring out. Figure out each guy's role and who he can rely on in certain situations.
Absolutely. Aaron, what are your thoughts on, I know you talked about giving Zay your Gruntled of the game and player of the game. What are your thoughts on the rest of the receivers today?
Yeah, I still like what they have, considering they have not spent a lot to get it, right? So you have McKenzie and Foster. I think those are guys that I'm excited to see the development throughout the rest of the year. Obviously, McKenzie had some issues today in the special teams game, but I think he can be a weapon that they need, that they were trying to get all summer, in the guy that's kind of your trick play guy, a little bit of a burner. They got to get Josh Allen burners, and they have 2 guys that seem to be that. If they can develop nicely here throughout the rest of the year year and come into camp next year as guys that have legitimate chances to make another 53-man roster. I think that's a huge benefit for this Bills team, because going into the season with not knowing what Zay was going to be able to do, if he was going to be able to take a step moving forward, you really didn't know if they had to get 4 wide receivers next year, if it had to be 5 whole new guys that they were going to have to bring in. And I think if they can have 3 guys going into next year that they feel pretty good about, and Josh Allen has some comfort with, and you bring in a couple more guys, it takes a lot of pressure off the front office to totally reinvent that room. So that's something I'm going to be watching closely, is how much can those players, Zay, Foster, and McKenzie develop to be something that the front office feels comfortable about going into this offseason.
Absolutely. I mean, you look at Isaiah McKenzie, 4 catches on 4 targets for 46 yards, and I don't put that muff punt on him at all. Lafayette Pitts fell into him. But just that kind of, opportunity there, I don't think he's a guarantee for the roster next year by any means, but I think there's a very reasonable shot that he gets himself there, and all of a sudden you're looking at that. Robert Foster, the same way. If he, that one pass that, it was, I think I saw Joe B put it out there. It was 66 yards in the air.
Flat-footed.
66 yards without really being able to step into it, which would have been, because I know last week when he hit hit the long one, that was the longest air yards so far this season. So that would have been the longest air yards they had ever recorded overall with that play today. So it didn't connect, but again, there's a little bit of a growing rapport with Foster. I think that there's a chance that Zay Jones has shown himself to be a good offense's number 2 receiver. I think that Foster can be that number 4 when you're 4 wide and you want a deep threat, and that Isaiah McKenzie can be the gimmicky number 5 guy, and that that's not easy to just say, just go sign a number 1 and a number 3, but maybe we can go sign someone legit. We all kind of have Tyrell Williams on our wish list, but somebody like that, and then you might draft a guy who starts out as a number 3 or kind of another speedster there, and only needing to bring in 2 would be awful nice going into next year.
You know what's great about what's happened this year at the receiver room, regardless if McKenzie or Foster or even bringing Deontay Thompson back are the guys, what we do know is that we need speedsters. We need guys that can separate with speed because of Josh Allen. Because as soon as that speed was inserted into the lineup, guess what? All of those safeties are backing up. You saw almost every first down, you saw 2 high safety looks because they were worried about those explosive plays. So at the very least, what this year has taught us is we tried early on to do the big receiver play, and even going into last year and playing with the big receivers, throwing those back shoulders on 3rd and long and all that good stuff. Well, it didn't work. But as soon as they inserted those speed guys, we saw the offense open up a little more, and we're going to need those explosive plays. And I'm not just talking this year. You're going to need those next years too, because Josh Allen's still going to struggle with accuracy and completion percentage and hitting ball placement properly. So when they get those opportunities, they have to hit them. And having those speed guys that can separate, with their physical abilities is going to be key to Allen's development, hands down.
Oh yeah,
Absolutely.
I don't think we're ever going to see Josh Allen as a 70% completion percentage guy. The key is, can he get himself up there at 60 plus, maybe 62, but with a really high yards per attempt? Can we get him there with some, good consistent chunk plays, being able to pick up those yards? And that's where you get into the Cam Newton comparison. Cam Newton's in the exact same ballpark, always in the low 60s, has had seasons below 60%, but has also had fantastic seasons at 62% completion percentage, where you are pushing the ball down the field, big plays all the time, picking up plays with your legs, and having that overall package that threatens the defense, where, Erik, as you touched on earlier, you're taking a guy out of the running where he has to spy you, and all of a sudden that's one more guy that's available, and now we have our kind of possession trustworthy guy in Zay Jones. I want speed everywhere else that threatens the defense, and when we have a guy who has the cannon that he does, that scramble play becomes a whole new world to be able to do that.
Yeah, speed is the name of the game. Erik alluded to the kind of open basketball, open court, scrambling around. Speed's the name of the game in the NFL, and I think that's what's going to win in the future going forward. One last thing about the receivers I want to touch on, because we own our takes here at Cover1 Buffalo. And this summer I was out saying, sign Kelvin Benjamin to an extension before the season. Let's get this guy locked in here. And I think maybe my worst take I've ever had on record, and I want to own it. It was a horrible take. I'm glad
I forgot about that.
I am so glad nobody at One Bills Drive listens to me, because I would be kicking myself if I signed that guy, because it's just been horrible this year.
There's something, Greg, I want to talk about, kind of transitioning to the offensive line.
Yeah.
Because we lost Bodine early, obviously. He only played, 2 or 3 snaps, right? And then Groy had to come in at center, which I said, I'm happier putting Groy at center than guard. So you have Groy, who's the backup, coming in at center. And then you have Jeremiah Searles coming in at right guard. So talk about, Greg, what you thought the offensive line did and maybe how it affected Allen's game overall, and having those two other, basically backup offensive linemen in the game.
Yeah, it's interesting to look at it because he was certainly under pressure a lot. I think if we look at some of the PFF pressures when that comes out later on, we're probably going to see a pretty high number. He really didn't give up a sack until later in the game when they were in obvious passing situations, and getting that, to that point. I think you saw they cover on the outside on one, and then obviously that safety blitz that got home and probably should have been a penalty. So I was really nervous when Groy came in, especially because he hadn't practiced as the number one center during the week, and especially some of the communication things and the blitz pickups. So again, they probably scrapped it out to a reasonable degree for what their talent is. I think that we're going to see for sure 3 new additions. I'd love to see 3 new starters, and that's assuming that Wyatt Teller continues to develop. And I actually think we might see Deion Dawkins flip over to the right side if we maybe draft a franchise guy in the first round to be able to flip over there at left tackle. So I expected it to be worse when I saw Bodine go out, but honestly, with Josh Allen being able to be maneuvering and evading some of the pressure that was there, I actually thought they probably did a serviceable job compared to the fact that they can completely ruin the game if you let them. So I guess my expectations are so low that they weren't as bad as I thought they were going to be.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts, Aaron?
I mentioned in the Slack channel it's not a good thing, but the drop off from your starting center to your backup center is so insignificant. And I don't think that either of them should be starters in the NFL. But that it makes that drop off when something like that happens not as big of a deal as maybe it is for other teams around the league. It's not a good problem.
Just have a terrible starting center, and then the backup doesn't seem so bad.
Across the board, but that's how I felt when that injury happened. I said, okay, well, the drop off's not terrible. It's definitely something they have to fix, and I agree with what Erik said. Shady's getting a lot of flack this year, and I think especially in the run game, they don't look good. I mean, he's just getting hit before he can even make a move. I don't think it's all his eyes or age isn't a factor, because you see when he does break loose, he still has the wiggle, he still has the ability to get to the outside. I just don't think that they're doing a very good job in the run game. Erik, from you, I'm excited to hear about, because we're not hearing a lot about Dawkins, and I haven't gotten my eyes on Teller, and those are probably the 2 guys I'm most interested in, because I think that they're the guys that you're going to see moving forward, and that the team is hoping is part of the future of this offensive line. Yeah. And I want your opinion on where we're at here at this point in the season with those guys.
I mean, I thought Dawkins had his moments today. I think what Miami was trying to do from a defensive line standpoint was use speed. They were using a lot of stunts, and they were using a lot of wide 9 type speed rushes, and I think that gives Dawkins trouble along the perimeter, and we saw that at some critical times in the game. I think right now I'm looking at the PFF stats, and of course these are going to change, but it looks like Searles at right guard had 8 QB hurries. So think about that. We talk about Josh Allen pulling the ball down and running too soon sometimes. Well, maybe some of that had to do with the pocket being pushed in his face with, these young guys. Groy, I think he only gave up 1 pressure. So he didn't have a bad game. So I think that kind of plays to your point, Aaron. It wasn't really much of a drop-off at that position. But when he's facing that pressure in his face, maybe some of those rushes are, when we look at the film, were because of that. And you can't blame him for wanting to escape the pocket. I think that was, a part of the circumstance in today's game. So Teller, I thought Teller has handled himself pretty well. I think he got called for an unright penalty. That penalty was terrible. There was no hold there. The guy tried spinning out and pretty much fell down, and the ref saw it probably from behind Teller and called a hold, which I didn't see a hold there at all. But I thought Teller did a good job. I mean, you didn't really hear about him, right? So that's one thing that's good. And I think what he does so well is keep guys at arm's length. If the guy's going to beat him on a speed rush to his outside gap, well, guess what? He's just going to ride him wide. And we saw that it's the same thing from when guys are taking those inside moves. He's power stepping inside, protecting that A gap. So I thought Teller did decent today. I think Miami just screwed up on defense, honestly. For as much as, the stats are going to show Allen tore them apart. I think a lot of that had to do with that defensive game plan. You got to have integrity when you rush the passer, especially when you rush Josh Allen. You saw what he did last week. Like, how did they not rush with contain? You know what I mean? Like, you cannot go deeper than the quarterback there. I thought their discipline along the front seven there, I thought it was just awful today.
Yeah, and I think they put themselves in that spot. And like you said, there's such a trickle-down effect of the rest of the team, the rest of the offense, the running game, whether Allen has time to move up and maneuver in the pocket or feels like he has to break out. And I have so much hope in the fact that bringing in those additional players next year is going to make such a big difference to be able to, one, give Allen more confidence, reestablish the running game and maybe give some last-minute hope to LaShawn McCoy and kind of rejuvenation at 31 years old. I think there's so much potential there, but I think it's going to take, honestly, in my mind, 3 new starters, probably at center, right guard, and right tackle, to be able to bring that in. But at least hoping that we get something here in Teller. Maybe Searles establishes himself as a rotational swing guy later on. I wouldn't be shocked if we see Jordan Mills brought back as that kind of veteran swing, especially if we draft, or say we do draft a tackle or a Greg Little or from Alabama, Jonah Williams there. Maybe they want to have a guy that's there as a veteran, established guy. I can't imagine that people are going to be beating down Jordan Mills, door for contracts. Maybe we can bring him back as a, $3 or $4 million veteran swing guy that could start, but maybe we bring in the rookie after that. So, there's some guys there that I could see maybe being on the team, but I would love to see them spend big on the offensive line with that money in free agency.
Jordan Mills is like a bad stain on this roster.
I'm so glad you're going into Mills, dude.
They cannot get them off of this team. When I hear you say that, I just think of like a stain on the carpet that you just can't get out, and there's no way to repair it. And that's what he is, man. He's just there because they can't find a solution.
Dude, honestly, just real quick, because I'm gonna throw a shout out to Rob Quinn, because like I had mentioned how the Dolphins were speed rushing out wide, and I swear Mills was on the ground like every other play, it seems. So I could probably make Rob's always giving me shit about making a flop film, where just Mills just flopping all over the turf, highlight film. Like, honestly, I could probably do it from this game alone. But just a shout out to Rob Quinn over here at Cover1.
Yeah, it's kind of tough. Like I said, I hope that's where we see the spend. My wish list has been the Roger Saffold at guard, Matt Paradis at center, Darrell Williams at right tackle. I'll throw $10 million plus at all 3 of them. But obviously there's a lot of teams that have those guys on their wish list this offseason. So it's going to be interesting, where they focus their attention, who they decide they want to try to spend big on, and then where we see that, that effort go in the offseason. But I think it has the potential to be enormously impactful for Josh Allen, for the running game, and the trickle-down effect across the whole offensive roster.
Absolutely. I know you're probably going to want to get into the defense here in a second, but I did want to touch on and get your guys' opinions on, because I didn't get to talk to you a lot today during the games. There's so much going on the I've been getting killed on Twitter for my feelings on it. The 4th and 2 play that people are very upset that Sean McDermott didn't go for the 4th and 2, that they did punt the ball away. Obviously, after the punt, you can't really control that. What happens after the decision's made? You guys are coach. I want to swing it to, because I think I just got Greg's reaction by the and the eye roll. I think he's on my same page with this. Erik, you're a coach and you're in that situation. It's 4th and 2, whatever, midfield 47. Your defense is playing fantastic. What do you do?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. 1. Yeah, I mean, the analytics, maybe they tell you to go ahead and go for it there. I was kind of in between. I kind of wanted them to go for it, but I understood not going for it, because you got to go with your gut sometimes. And the gut feeling there was that his defense was playing really well. So to see him punt it there, and the reason that a lot of people have an issue with it is, in hindsight, what happened because of that punt, and how it wasn't that good of a punt, and everything that ensued afterwards. You can't think like that, because hindsight's always going to win, right, guys? So right. I don't mind. I could go either way. Honestly, I was not mad about it. I was not hung up on it like a lot of people were on Twitter.
Yeah, I think that, it's unfair to go that route. You're at the 50. You were coming off 3 straight 3-and-outs, 2 of which had negative yardage. So your defense
was almost a safety.
Yeah, your defense had really locked in. I think you showed a lot of confidence there. You just got to that point. I think that there's only a couple minutes left, 2 minutes or so, or 3 minutes left in the half. I think that you're hoping that maybe that kind of goes down and you're not giving up a lot of points. And obviously, you're not planning on having the kick partially blocked. You're planning on him pinning it deep, and he had just done that on 2 other plays. Both of those punting from the Bills 40 and the Bills 43. So obviously there was the potential there to be able to put them in a position, and that's what your plan is. So, I think that that's also another thing that when you build that offensive line, you get a lot of those other things going. You have more of a threat of a running game. You have more that you can do. I'd love to see a time where we feel confident we can do a play action rollout there with a flood, going, and you give Allen multiple options to be able to look at it and to possibly run and pick it up. And I think a time will come where we can do that. But with as young as Allen is, the offensive line issues we have, I think you have a lot more risk of that turning into a negative play that really puts the defense in a difficult position. And, I support it. So, again, I'm not far from you, Erik, that I get it, and I would have been behind it and excited about it if they went for it. But if it was me, I would have punted as well.
Yeah, I think it came down to confidence in the different units, essentially. And that, my post was that I thought it was silly to get mad about because I agree with you guys. You can go either way on it, but I don't think they have confidence in the offense. And the offense didn't do anything in the first half to establish confidence in them. I think if that happens in the second half and time's a different factor and the pace of the game's a different factor, you definitely go for it. They had a lot more confidence in the defense at that point, and that does play a role in decision-making. If you don't have confidence that your offense is going to convert there, you don't want to give the team the ball. They're up by 1. You don't want to give them the ball and put that stress on your defense that is playing fantastic. I think ultimately it came down to confidence in the units.
Yeah, and this is everyone just 2 weeks ago was saying how this is the worst offense ever, and then they want you to just go in on these 4th and 2 situations when, it could just, go in the other way. Okay, you don't get it there. Well, now they get a short field and they can get some more points. I can't live in that realm where I'm always second guessing these coaches because you know what? When it comes down to it, they have more information at their fingertips about their team, about what's going on in the game than we do sitting on our couch watching it from home. It just that's the way it is, guys, right?
Yeah. Sean McDermott's forgotten more football than I'll ever know in my life.
No doubt.
The analytics crowd are also looking at numbers that are league wide, and if I had Drew Brees and Michael Thomas, I'd go for a lot more 4th and 2s also.
Yeah. The Bills are 5 of 12, I think. I saw on 4th downs. The Saints are 6 of 7. So yeah, league wide. When you change it to league wide, it's totally different. But if you're talking about the Bills are 40% on the year on 4th down, I don't like those odds.
Yeah. One last piece before we flip over to the defense. I'm one that I don't blame Charles Clay for that last drop. That I think people were going nuts. I think that you had an amazing rollout. I think that, Allen tried to get himself some room, was all the way over to the left side, tried to set his feet, come back. He threw a decent ball, but it was an impressive play to get it from the far hash, far numbers of the 40 all the way to the end zone, but it wasn't his best throw. I think that Charles Clay tried to make a play on it. I think he was a little unsure how quick it was coming down. Maybe he could have stayed on his feet a little bit longer to come back to it, but it's one of those plays where I think I saw a really good tweet about it. Would I like to see Allen throw, keep his feet and maybe make a little bit sharper throw? Sure. Would I like to see Charles Clay make a little bit better play on the ball and come up with the play? Of course. That would have been awesome and an amazing highlight for Josh Allen to have his, 2-minute drill comeback. But I don't think that was a bad play by either of them. It wasn't a terrible duck that some people were making it out to be, and it wasn't some huge obvious drop by Charles Clay that, he should have absolutely brought it in. It would have been an incredibly impressive play by both of them and not something that I don't know that there's more than 2 other quarterbacks in the NFL that could get the ball from that spot during that run and immediately pivoting against his body and against the grain to get it to the far numbers in the end zone. Erik, what were your thoughts on that final play?
Yeah, I think from when the film comes out, I think we're going to see a few different things come out about that play. First of all, I think if Allen would have just stayed in the pocket with that 3-man rush and that spy, I think Zay Jones is coming open from left to right on a on a dagger concept, which is something we break down pretty much every week. It's one of their base plays in this offense. So I think if Allen was just comfortable staying in the pocket, maybe another second, I think that throw's coming open, because if you go back and watch it, you'll see Kiko Alonso carrying the number 3 receiver, which is Charles Clay, down the middle of the field, and you're going to see the intermediate open up. I'd say it's probably about a 12 to 14-yard dig route coming across the middle. I think that play is there. But again, with all the circumstances that were going into this game, especially in the second half, I can't blame Allen for wanting to take off. Now, he gets outside the pocket and he's rolling, he rolled right to left. He gets outside the pocket and he's getting ready to throw. He did a great job of swinging his hips around, which we saw him do in the first half too to Zay Jones that was dropped. That's something in college, guys. He wouldn't have done that. All right, so let's give him a little props there. He would not have swung his hips around, squared up, and made that throw. The issue with that throw, when you're running full speed to your left, you're trying to get your hips around, and you're throwing it back to the right, your momentum, even if your feet are set, or your momentum's still going to take you from right to left, right? And when he's throwing back to the right a little bit towards Clay, he's trying to get, obviously, enough velocity on the throw, so he pushed it rather than have it roll off his fingertips. And all of that has to do with him, moving and running to his left. So it wasn't the prettiest play, but would we like to see a better throw? As Greg said, yes. Would we like to see a better catch? Yes. But, things like this happen. I mean, we're not perfect at our jobs. Obviously Clay was coming back this week, and he didn't look quite himself, honestly. Well, I mean, besides the drop, because that's something he's done his whole career. But, we have bad days at the workshop. So, I mean, it sucks that it came down to that play, but I'm with Shady McCoy and what he said post-game. The game wasn't decided by that throw or with that drop.
100%. Aaron, are we off base here?
No, I totally agree with Shady's comment. It wasn't that the play didn't decide the outcome of the game. I think that we should just be excited that the game came down to a final play. I think that's super cool. It ended up making it an exciting game for the day. I was on the edge of my seat while that play was happening. I think that we saw it was the first time we saw the hero ball Josh Allen come out, where he turned his back to the offensive line to try to scramble. You get a little nervous that something really terrible is going to happen. Yes, you'd like to see the play get made. I guess I will a little bit hold it on Charles Clay, because like Erik said, he's burned me so many times in his career with the Buffalo Bills, a drop and touchdown. So just the historical reference alone, and being a biased fan that I am, I can't always be an objective fan. I'm going to still pin it on Charles Clay.
No, and I think obviously that's a huge spot for us next year. That I think Kroom has been fine, and I'm okay if he's on the roster, but he's not your, no. Oh, good, we have a starter. I think Charles Clay is one of the most obvious cap cuts next year beyond, people like John Miller and Kelvin Benjamin walking away. So I think the tight end somewhere that we're going to see both a signing and a draft pick next year to bring in probably our number 1 and our number 3, and that you'll still see Kroom maybe as the number 2. But I don't even think that's a sure thing at all either, other than the fact that he's dating the owner's daughter. I think that's always positive. We've got to be happy though that Nick O'Leary didn't kill us. If O'Leary,
he almost converted that.
If he converted that first down, I was going to be so pissed that they gave him a big moment.
It would have been so Billsy though, right? Yeah. It would have been so Billsy. Like that's what we would have had to hear about. Clay drops it, but O'Leary's converting. Come on, man.
Oh yeah, it would have made me crazy. All right, we're almost 40 or 50 minutes into the pod here. Let's flip over to defense a little bit. I will say, it probably wasn't our best defensive effort today. I mean, there were certainly a lot of positive things, and it was because of the moments. I think overall, when you look at 23 carries for 60 yards, 2.6 yards per carry from rushing, that's great. You talk about holding Tannehill to 137 yards and an interception and 3 sacks. I think that's also very positive. And I think we got pretty consistent pressure, especially after that opening touchdown drive. We were getting to him regularly. So I think the pressures are a lot more than the 3 sacks that we saw. But just being able to give up the touchdowns that we did, letting them convert, not holding them to a field goal in any of their red zone trips, it was a little bit disappointing overall. So it's kind of hard to see a team not top 200 yards, and we held them to a total of 175 yards of total offense, and to be disappointed. Am I crazy there, Erik?
No, definitely. I thought the defense, I think they did what they're, expected of them. I think, the red zone I think they're 3 for 3 in the red zone. The Dolphins were. That sucked. And honestly, that touchdown to Stills in the corner of the end zone. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it was just a camera angle, but it looked like Hughes was mugged.
I'm still waiting for Jordan Poyer to get his interception.
And that was a pick, right?
It was in his hands. I didn't understand how it got to Still's hands.
Yeah. It was like the ball was superimposed into Still's hands after the play. I was like, wait.
It was glitchy.
Actually mid-celebration of the interception.
Oh, yeah. It was just, and at minimum, it looked like it was going to be a breakup. So the fact that it looked like an interception and not only went through Poyer's hands so cleanly that he didn't pick it off, but he didn't even tip it out of the way and Stills just grabbed it, got his 2 feet down. And, I mean, that's huge. That's as pivotal as it can be for being able to be in that spot. Erik, what was your thought on the defensive line pressure? I thought that, we'll get into it in a minute with Jordan Phillips' fluky penalty that he got called for, but I actually thought the defensive line did a really nice job, kind of controlling the line of scrimmage as you always hear McDermott talk about.
Yeah, what I saw was a lot of they kept O'Leary in. Anytime O'Leary was in, if you guys follow me on Twitter, anytime O'Leary was in, they were keeping him in the block. Obviously, he knows our defense really well. He played against them every day in practice when he was with us. So anytime they kept him in, they were keeping him in to help on Jerry Hughes, which it meant that the center was sliding to that side, which puts one-on-one the right guard and right tackle versus the Trent Murphys, the Shaq Lawsons, and the Lorenzo Alexanders and Kyle Williams and those guys. And I thought the Bills did a great job of attacking that man side of the protection. And, I mean, that spin move by Zoe, man, it was just ridiculous.
So fast.
Looked like the guy, old man.
Dude, it's nuts the output he's having right now at his stage in his career. I mean, he's in his last year, right? I think they should bring him back. I don't know. Maybe
absolutely.
It's just me.
No, I'd be shocked if he doesn't come back.
Yeah, me too. And he just offers so much. So they found a good niche for him. I thought the front did a decent job against Tannehill in that offensive line. I obviously drew a couple penalties. I think the linebackers had their moments. Some of the best plays are made by these guys, but also they're taken advantage of sometimes. I want to go back and look at that touchdown to Drake. I almost feel like it was man coverage and maybe Tremaine got caught again with his eyes in the backfield instead of following Drake as Jordan Poyer blitzed off the edge. It'll be interesting to see who was responsible for the fourth receiver in that, because they had trips to that side. So who was responsible for number 4 swinging out that way? That's going to be one I'm going to be paying attention to when I look at the film.
Hey, Aaron, what were your thoughts on the front seven there from a defensive standpoint today?
I want to watch the game again, but I thought that Miami got away with a lot of holding. I think I've seen it a lot, and I'm hoping that it's just not my biased fan while I'm watching the game, but I don't think that Jerry Hughes gets the respect from the league they deserves, and maybe some of that has to do with some of the way he's been in the past and his undisciplined nature. Or
possibly threatening to kill a referee after the game.
That was after the game. We don't know what it was. I'm not gonna get
it was probably because of that hold on that touchdown, I'm telling you.
Yeah. But you see it a lot. His arms are up, and he's still beating a guy, and the guy's just draped all over him, and it's becoming frustrating. I don't expect it to get a flag on it every time that it happens, but you do expect for it to happen sometimes. I saw Shaq Lawson a few times look like he was going to get a pressure and is just being held back. So I think that I
saw 2 holding calls that actually Shaq got called against the tackle blocking him.
Yeah, so I think our defensive line outmatched the Miami offensive line, but I think that a lot was left on the field and that they got away with quite a bit. So I'm happy with it. I do think that Gase got away from the run game a little bit. I thought they were starting to establish something nice there early in the game.
Yeah,
Miami
for sure.
was. And I don't know why they went away from it, but I think that they could have really gotten out to a stronger lead and established more dominance against the Bills defense if they stuck to the run, because they were kind of establishing some dominance early.
And he's a nasty running back, and he's a guy that he's tore us up. I mean, last year I think he went off a few times, so I was surprised. That's a good pointer. I was surprised that they got away from the run.
I thought today was Trent Murphy's best game I've seen so far. I saw him in the backfield multiple times. He almost had the safety. He had another tackle for a loss and was consistently there in pressure. I know that they're still rotating him in and trying to keep things regular there, but I was actually really happy with the defensive line in general and what they were able to do from an overall pressure standpoint and just getting into Tannehill's ear and trying to make it difficult on him. And I was honestly disappointed in the linebackers today. I thought that Milano got caught up in the muck multiple times, and I keep telling myself that Tremaine Edmonds is only 20, and I know he's learning, and these are important reps, just like Josh Allen. But he definitely gets tricked regularly and gets himself, looking in the wrong places, manipulated with his eyes. And I know that's going to come because he did have a couple other plays where the length was awesome and he was able to get a hand on a ball and able to make some positive plays from a coverage standpoint. But there's multiple times where I see him there and he goes to fill in the run spot and gets caught up with the guard, and the running back just flies right by him and doesn't get off of blocks well. So I know that he's still a rookie, but I think some fans are getting upset that he's not getting more discussion from the defensive rookie of the year that you're hearing with Derwin James and Leighton Vander Esch and Bradley Chubb and who am I drawing a blank on the corner from Cleveland that they took number 4 overall?
Ward?
Yeah, and Ward. So I think those 4 or 5 guys really are putting those things up. But it's been pretty up and down from Tremaine Edmonds in my mind. That I'm hoping we see more development, but he certainly has a lot more to learn to be able to get him to be the franchise linebacker we need.
Yeah, I mean, again, he's young. Yes, he's 20. But I don't think, and I don't expect fans to understand how much responsibility he has. Because, you have McDermott up at the podium week in and week out saying he's doing this, doing checks in the huddle. He's doing this at the line of scrimmage. And I think a lot of people take that as coach speak. And that portion of it is. But there is a lot on his plate from a run-to-pass standpoint. And so when you see his eyes get stuck in the backfield, it's going to happen from time to time with a guy like that. A lot of times he has the athleticism to make up for it and maybe turn what could have been a 12-yard gain into just a 4-yard gain, but he's still slow diagnosing that from run-to-pass. So there's going to be those moments, but you got to remember a guy like that at that position who has the responsibility that he has, there's a lot for him to diagnose in one play, and he's a young guy coming from a defense where that they really didn't put that much responsibility compared to obviously the NFL level. He was just a guy that relied on his athleticism at the college level and got away with it in the Bud Foster defense. So there are growing pains as far as the defensive rookie of the year talk. I mean, yeah, that's all BS. I mean, does he deserve to be in there? I don't think so. I mean, right now he's not playing at that level as some of those guys are. And if anyone wants to argue draft status where they shouldn't have traded up to get him, I'm sorry. You're stuck with this guy, guys. So you need to get over that. Honestly, this guy's going to be special. He's shown, that he can be special, and you just got to give it time. He's going to figure things out. I mean, how often do you see him make the same mistake in the same game? You usually see him rectify those things. Again, I think the film will tell a little different story, especially in the red zone on that touchdown. I think he might have been responsible for that, but you got to take the good with the bad, just like Josh Allen, like Greg said.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of great parallels between Allen and Edmonds, that they're both totally raw physical freaks, and everybody sees the upside if they can hit their ceilings. I think Edmonds has more of a chance to hit his ceiling in his career than maybe Allen does, and I think that fans should rest easy knowing that Bobby Babich is the guy tutoring him in the film room and working with him because he has a great track record of bringing linebackers along. And also you have a guy like Zoe in that room with him and Milano helping those guys see what they're seeing on the game.
Sure.
It's hard, man. Middle linebacker is not an easy position to play. This is a guy that's transitioning into that role. He's a young guy. It's a lot of responsibility. So the parallel to Allen's big, and Allen is missing things too. Obviously, He's going to make more flash plays because he has the ball in his hands, and he can use his athleticism to make some plays that make up for him missing plays. Tremaine Edmonds isn't going to get as many opportunities to change the game as Allen will, but I think that parallel is a great parallel to watch those two in their development.
I also think that we're going to see the benefit of all the reps that he's getting 2 and 3 and 4 years from now, where we really see what he's able to become when he's going to be 24 years old and in his 5th NFL season already. And I think we're really going to see the benefits of it then. So getting him as many of those reps as possible, seeing as many different coverages as Erik touched on, not making that same mistake twice, and building that bank of knowledge and experience and exposure in his mind is going to be huge. And then those physical gifts of being 6'5", 250, running a 4.5 with that crazy wingspan, that's really what's going to help prepare him in the future. The last piece we have on the defensive side, just the secondary. I know that we saw an interception from Hyde. I thought that he played well. I actually saw Jordan Poyer flash multiple times for not the best reasons. Not making the play on that touchdown in the corner. I saw him coming on a lot of blitzes that he didn't quite get there in time. And, so I don't want to hold that against him because I think really highly of our secondary. But giving up the 3 touchdowns, it was frustrating that communication wasn't there. So, again, we held them to 175 total yards and only 137 passing yards. But definitely some things that I think could be improved on and going to be some painful moments in the film breakdown. But, Aaron, what were your thoughts on the secondary in their game today?
Yeah, I thought there were some things that were sloppy at times, especially from, I think, the standard. McDermott talks about the standard. I don't think it was to the standard that he expects out of that unit. I think that they made Ryan Tannehill look better than he was at times. I'll tell you that one touchdown pass from Tannehill was a beauty. I forget which one it was. It was like right up the middle of the field, almost in double coverage. I felt like it was the one that Hyde probably should have made a play on the ball.
Yeah, Devontae Parker's on the opening drive.
Parker, that was a beautiful throw from Tannehill. But outside of that, I think that they made him maybe look a little bit better than he was. All around, though, I'm excited about this unit. What I want to know a little bit is Erik's view of Levi Wallace, because he's a guy that is super intriguing to me, and he's getting a ton of reps for an undrafted free agent. And I haven't had a chance to really watch him closely. I'm sure it's not all good or all bad, but where is he at getting kind of thrown into the fire here, Erik?
I think he's learning. I don't think he is totally out of position. Obviously, you guys know his story, at Bama and whatnot. But he got some really good coaching there, and I think you see flashes of that technique. His use of hands, his ability to disrupt receivers, whether it's at the line of scrimmage or halfway through the route stem. I think he's got pretty good zone eyes, and I think we saw. It seemed like they played a little more zone today. I know there were a couple plays, and I think even then that touchdown I keep referencing to Drake. I think for the most part, though, we played a lot of zone coverage, and he has good zone eyes. I don't think he's anything special yet. Would I say let's lock him in as cornerback 2, and now we don't need to upgrade it for next year? No, I'm not to that point yet. And he still needs to get some reps. He doesn't have that many reps yet this year, but I thought for the most part he didn't stand out on film, which is good for a young cornerback like that.
Yeah, I certainly see him more so as probably I feel comfortable that we have a rock-solid cornerback 4 next year and that he deserves to be on the roster. Taron Johnson obviously has continued to be really strong in the slot. Trey is our cornerback 1 and everything that you want him to be. But I think that he's somebody that's earning a spot on this roster next year, which is great because it's an undrafted free agent. That's exclusive rights free agency, and having a guy locked in at the minimum for 4 years. That's, I was explaining that in the premium chat here. When you add enough of those up, if we get Robert Foster on the roster going into next year, you get, the Eddie Yarboroughs, you get the guys like Isaiah McKenzie, and you get a guy like a Levi Wallace. If you add up a handful of those, all of a sudden, instead of paying a rookie draft pick, people underestimate. Sometimes those get up to 1.3, 1.5, 1.8 million dollars, and it's not terrible money. But if you get 4 or 5 of those undrafted guys, all of a sudden you've given yourselves an extra $1 million from each of those. 4 or 5 of them equals maybe a free $5 million player, and that kind of money really adds up when you find guys who can contribute at the undrafted free agent level and can be on the team for multiple years. People underestimate that additional cap space that somebody like an Eddie Yarborough gives you as your 4th defensive end sticking on the roster.
The most important thing for that, Aaron, real quick, when you're trying to find those role guys, yes, they got to obviously produce, but Coach McDermott talked about it last week. When the Robert Fosters or like the McKenzies, like you talked about, when those guys do come in, they got to make plays when they're there. And I know Wallace wasn't really targeted too much today, but Eddie Yarborough, the guy, when he's in, he's one of the better run defenders along that defensive line. He's always chasing the play down away from him. It's just time and time again that guy's making plays. So you understanding your roles on your defense or your offense or whatever you're talking about, but also filling it with guys that can, play those roles and with the strong traits that, the Eddie Yarboroughs, and those guys bring.
Yeah, and I was just going to say I agree with Greg's point on the undrafted free agent and how big that is. And I think I don't want people to be misled by me saying that I'm intrigued by Wallace. I see him as a guy that where we don't have to have a guy like Lafayette Pitts play a cornerback when there's injuries happening to whoever it is that we get to be the number 2 cornerback. I think the more of those guys that you can bring in, whether it's late round draft picks or the undrafted guys, and know that you have some depth that you can get some reps with on a down year, and maybe get a look and see if you're comfortable playing them, the better. And then you don't have to address that next year. I want to shore up as many of the depth positions going into the offseason where that they can really hyper focus and spend the money where they need to versus just getting a lot of guys.
Well, and that plays perfectly into our last point here from the game today. Depth is a huge impact on special teams. When you have that $55 million in dead cap that's available to be used, and all of a sudden that many more, a stronger third linebacker, a better additional safety, a better fourth corner, another receiver that's there, you're able to then push some of those other talented guys down, and all of a sudden you have better quality on the bottom end of the roster, and then you have guys, you see some of the best teams, they have some real players playing on special teams, and the Bills, we basically have all of our slappies out there. And today, in my mind, was the worst special teams game we've seen all season. We gave up multiple solid returns. We had no positive returns. We had muff punts. We had missed extra points. We had missed field goals. We had penalties on just about every dang return.
Blocked punt.
We had a blocked punt, and that was after another one was almost blocked earlier in the game. So it was just a terrible crossing, and my only semblance of hope from that is, oh good, there won't be any excuse to fire Danny Crossman. So, Erik, what were your thoughts on the special teams today and the embarrassment we saw?
Yeah, I think what it came down to today, and I've tweeted this, it came down to penalties, of course. You just can't have 13 penalties for 120 yards, guys. And maybe that's the coach in me coming out. But you just can't win games like that, especially when you're talking about a division rival and a tight game. It's always going to be tight between us, and to give that many yards away, you can't do that. And they're a bad team. Honestly, if we had half of the penalties, I don't think this probably wouldn't have been a close game. Second of all, yes, the special teams was awful. There's just too many things that went wrong, and just to wrap it up real quick, I just think that. It's a broken record when we talk about Danny Crossman. I think it's time, guys. I think it's just time.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. Anything to add on that end of it, Aaron?
Yeah, I just think that you saw the Green Bay Packers fire their head coach today. I think there's no reason to continue even to this point moving forward with Danny Crossman. The sooner they get him out of there, the better. I think just even establishing that the standard that McDermott talks about in setting is not acceptable on that side of the ball in the third aspect of the game. So to set that standard and say, hey, this is not acceptable the way you guys are playing. If you guys want to be on this team next year, you really need to step it up, and we're getting rid of this guy. And it's really on all of you to really step up and earn your spot on this team moving forward.
Yeah, as we start to close out here, we'll go around the horn for some final thoughts. I have two different things. One, every week I talk about the recipe for a Bills victory. And the recipe for a Bills victory is a positive turnover differential, a positive penalty differential, and a couple of those big plays going our way. Well, today we had 3 turnovers to their 1. We had 13 penalties to their 8. And we didn't connect on the bomb to Robert Foster, and yet we were still one play away from winning this game. And that kind of hope and optimism that, pretty much was Josh Allen on the offensive side of the ball, bringing that to life is so exciting for a Bills fan. And I know that, everybody gets into it on, it's already kind of a lost season. You were already, 4-7 and in a position where we weren't really in a position to make a playoff run without some insane miraculous things falling in place. So hey, why don't you just lose out and do that? And I don't want that for my team. I want my team to go out there and try to win every game. I never want to see tanking. I don't have it in me to watch a Bills game and to root for a loss. But I will say, stepping away from that, I'm okay seeing it as a silver lining that, hey, we didn't win. I wanted to beat Miami. I wanted that 2-minute drill to be, the legend of Josh Allen, and I wanted Charles Clay to make that catch. But the fact that he didn't, we are now tied with 5 teams from the 5th pick to the 9th pick. And we had a lot of other teams today in similar spot to the Bills win. You saw some games that, were kind of surprising upsets, and you saw some wins coming from teams that weren't expecting to do that. The Cardinals knocking off the Packers, the Giants knocking off the Bears, the Buccaneers knocking off the Panthers, the Jags shutting out the Colts. The Jets almost beat the Titans. You had a lot of games like that where I think that the Bills are still going to be in a position, and the difference when you're not going for a quarterback, the difference of where you pick in the draft just doesn't matter that much, whether we're 7th or whether we're 14th. It's just not that critical from that view. So, but I'm okay taking it as a silver lining after the fact that, hey, we didn't win, but at least we got a little bit of improvement there. So, Erik, what are your final thoughts for the night?
Yeah, I mean, I've talked about it the whole show. I think the Josh Allen experience, I thought that he did some of the things that got him drafted top 10. I mean, some of the throws that he was making from the pocket I'm talking about, especially on that last couple of drives. You know, he's standing in the pocket and he's rifling him in those tight windows. And even the little dump down the shady was a heady play by him. And he was just doing whatever it took to move the play down the field and move the drive down the field. I thought that he did a great job in that second half of adjusting. I think the offense from a total standpoint, overall standpoint, I think it's starting to shape itself a little more. According to Pro Football Focus right now, 9 of Allen's passes, only 9 were from 9 yards or shorter. So, and 4 of those were behind the line of scrimmage. So everything else was down the field or in the intermediate area. That's what you want to do. You want to maximize who Josh Allen is. Yes, he's got a big arm. Yes, those are low percentage passes going deep over 20 yards. But when you hit those, it's going to change the game. It's going to change the defensive game plan. It's going to open things up underneath. And so I think that I think we're seeing it shape up from a Josh Allen standpoint, and I think we're seeing how he's affecting defenses and how the offense is shaping. So I think it's very encouraging. We're going to see some bad things too, but I think that was a fun game, even though we lost. I think that was a really fun game.
No, I agree completely.
Hey, this is JJ Redick.
So what are we able to, Aaron, what are your final thoughts?
I don't know what's going on. Sorry. Yeah, no, my final thoughts are I have tickets to the Jets game. I got them a few weeks ago, and I didn't buy them. They were given to me, and I was not super. I was like, oh, great. I get to go watch them play the Jets. This isn't going to be very fun at all. And where I'm at with this team is I'm actually super excited to go and watch Josh Allen live. I'm very excited to see what he's going to do in that development, kind of just piggybacking on the things you said. So I'm not concerned about wins. I'm glad that they're in games like today and keeping the game exciting and keeping me as a fan engaged in the game, and it's not a blowout and I stop taking notes at halftime. I'm engaged in the game, so as long as they continue to keep me engaged in the game and I see this development, there's some flash plays and some fun, I'm excited. I wait all year for Bills football, so I'm going to continue to be excited as long as they're playing, whether or not they're piling up wins or not.
No, I think that's a great point. And just, again, the fact that you could be excited for that game next week, I'm envious and looking forward to another great game at home from Josh Allen and being able to get that crowd going. As we close out here, I know we talked about wanting to do a contest. We appreciate we had some great interaction. Jason Fordy was giving us a hard time in the chat about nitpicking on the defense too much, that if not for the muff punt and the penalties, they probably score like 13 points. So
he's not lying.
He's probably
right.
He's probably right. I told him we probably raised our expectations a little bit too much with the
we're
defense.
Setting the standard, man. We're
yeah.
Along those lines, Mike Lucas was awesome in the chat tonight, and congratulations, Mike. You are our winner of the next Cover1 t-shirt contest here. Really love having everybody jump out here. Just a exciting opportunity for you guys to interact with us. It gives us good insight, and for things like Jason to be able to come in and kind of set us straight when we're going a little overboard. It really helps us kind of know what you guys are looking for, what you want to hear. And again, please take a moment to go out there onto iTunes or wherever you get your podcast from. Give us a review. Help spread the word. Let the people know about it on Twitter. On Twitter, you can find me at Greg Thompsett, GregTompsett. Erik, what can the people look forward from you, and where can they see your work?
I mean, honestly, I'm probably going to be doing a piece this week, several pieces on, Josh Allen, guys. So he's the focal point. He's the reason why a lot of Bills fans are excited after today's game. So I thought he got some really good reps, in some situational football. And so I'm going to be taking a look at that. I might even do another film room session for our subscribers where I can break down the entire drive and see how it unfolded. Because I'm sure the last few drives are just going to be exciting to watch again from the all-22 angle. So I'll be on the lookout for that at Cover1 and then at the Athletic Buffalo.
Love it. Love to see those. Aaron, where can the people find you?
They can find me on Twitter at Aaron Quinn 716. And as far as expectations, don't expect much. As I tell my wife all the time, don't set your expectations high because I'm gonna let you down. So just come and find me on Twitter. Let's have some fun, and you can catch me with Greg on the show for the pregame show or the matchup show on Wednesdays, and then the postgame show here.
Awesome. Looking forward to it. We'll see you guys again on Wednesday. And again, have a great week. Love to talk to everybody, and we'll talk to you soon.